I'm very pleased to kick off a discussion about water, sanitation, hygiene, and pandemic protection, or OneShared.World's Wash Pack campaign. And I'm honored to have two distinguished panelists. I will start with Caterina de Albuquerque, who unfortunately has to depart a little sooner. And she is the CEO of Sanitation and Water for All Global Partnership and the first United Nations Special Rapporteur on the rights to water and sanitation. And Naina Lal Kidwai, the former chairman of HSBC India, who we will speak with in depth in a moment. Katerina, what do you see as some of the barriers in the global system to full access to water, sanitation, and pandemic preparedness for all, in spite of international agreement on development goals? And why does it matter that the UN recognized water and sanitation as basic human rights?
Thank you, Annie. Thank you so much. And thank you to OneShared.World for organizing this event and for the opportunity that you are giving us to be here today with you. And warm greetings from Lisbon. Your question would demand from me to be here and talking for hours. But since time is short, I will try to go straight to the point. So the intersections, Annie, are undeniable. Water and sanitation are indeed great connectors, something everyone absolutely must have, and without which so many of our other aspirations and goals, including all of the Sustainable Development Goals, will be unachievable. When we think about pandemic preparedness, imagine if the world had already achieved universal access to water and sanitation 18 months ago when COVID struck. Imagine that all people had access to facilities to wash their hands properly, meaning less people would get sick. Imagine also that they had access to water and sanitation inside their dwellings. They wouldn't have to leave their houses and expose themselves to the pandemic. It would also mean that health facilities would have access to water and sanitation. So with the preventative power that clean water and sanitation brings, people would be more resilient, and the knock-on effects for communities and economies would be massive. Of course, we know this is not the world we live in. The most recent figures from the UN tell us that there are 2.2 billion people without access to safely managed drinking water, and 4.2, as a footnote, this is over half of our population, lack access to safely managed sanitation. 3 billion people cannot wash their hands with water and soap, when this is something that we have been preached about, bombarded with the need to wash our hands with water and soap to stop COVID. About a quarter of health facilities in the world don't have safe water. So when it comes to gender equality, without access to water and sanitation, women and girls are missing out on school and also on work opportunities, as they are forced to travel long distances in search of safe water because they need to care for sick relatives, or stay at home while they are menstruating because there are no appropriate facilities at school, or because they don't have the money to buy a tampon or a sanitary pad. So the barriers we are seeing, it's not a problem of engineering. It's not a problem of lack of knowledge. We do know what needs to be done. Closing the gap to achieve universal access comes down to a matter of political will and of leadership. We have examples like India, of the game-changing impact when decision makers decide to prioritize water and sanitation. Significantly, with political prioritization, we see a shift in how resources flow to support strong systems, good governance on water and sanitation. And we know also that this is a wise investment, because for every dollar invested in water and sanitation, we have at least a fourfold return in savings in health, but also in better economic and educational outcomes. Beyond the fact that ensuring access to wash is a smart political and economic choice, and as you mentioned, Annie, these are basic human rights. And what does this matter? Understanding water and sanitation as rights is a paradigm shift, which means that these are not matters of charity, but inalienable rights with corresponding obligations of states. This means that states are accountable to demonstrate how they are taking steps to constantly move towards universal access, because that's the legal obligation. It means that decision makers, who often come from, and we know that, the most well off part of society, cannot turn a blind eye on those in society who are marginalized and excluded, as is often the case, because these people also have these rights. They belong to everyone without discrimination. And additionally, it means that people are entitled to participate in discussions about how water and sanitation are delivered and maintained. Understanding water and sanitation as rights also provides an important framework to support a groundswell of activism to demand the political action, which I was referring to just now. So I think that appreciating water and sanitation as human rights is absolutely indispensable. And I do believe, and I've seen examples of how it makes a difference and changes the world. I think I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I do understand you have another pressing obligation. I really appreciate your participation today and your leadership on this issue. I do want to introduce Naina Lalkudwai. She is, as I said, the former chairman of HSBC India, and her interests in water, sanitation, the environment, and empowerment of women are reflected in her role as the chair of India's largest industry chamber's water mission. And she's also the founder and chair of the India Sanitation Coalition. And she's authored 3 books, including a bestseller, Survive or Sink, an action agenda for sanitation, water, pollution, and green finance. Naina, thank you so much for being with us. You have achieved many advances with the India Sanitation Coalition in the face of considerable obstacles. In your experience, what are some of the elements of successfully addressing this complex set of issues? And actually, I think we spoke about this. What kind of sharing of best practices is the most effective?
Annie, thank you. And I'm delighted that you have a segment at this OneShared.World on the very important issues of water and sanitation, which Katrina has so articulately put forward. I just want to pick up where she left off and remind the audience that India's achievement in the last 5 years, and we're really proud at the India Sanitation Coalition to have been a partner, but just a very small part of that huge exercise that the government embarked on, which took our rural coverage from 40% access to toilets to virtually 100%, certainly in the 90s. And all in the space of 5 years. And the second big achievement was through the behavior change that came through very active communication, which happened through government channels, it happened through NGOs, it happened through communities, it happened through children. And the power of communication, as you at OneShared.World are in fact using through the youth, is so effective. I saw it myself at the village level, with children out there telling us why they're washing their hands and how important it was that they wash their hands, why it was important that they use the toilet. And they were bringing their parents into the picture. So this whole exercise of communication at the village level, through skits, theatre, art, stories, through big advertisements that the government put out, and Bollywood films that themed on this subject, all brought the behavior change over the last 5 years. So let's, to answer the question of what is it that enabled all of this, you heard Katrina rightly point out that political leadership, in fact, our Prime Minister, within 2 months of getting elected from the ramparts of the Red Fort on our Independence Day, and I almost fell off my chair because I just started the India Sanitation Coalition and I thought this was going to be this big uphill battle. But he announced what is called the Swachh Bharat Mission, the Clean India Mission, which was primarily on the theme of sanitation. And of course, water is intimately linked with it and not very far behind. So ownership at the top, which meant every ministry aligned, and it made the job of those of us in the NGO type of communities really just push against an open door. And that took a lot of the pain that there's normally involved with engaging with governments in some of these areas. A second big area was communities. I don't think any program succeeds without communities. And the communication I mentioned earlier was a critical part of reaching out to communities. But NGOs play a key role as well because they handhold the community. And it's those partnerships between communities and government, local government and citizens that helps to take government activity forward. A third area was informing citizens. Why is it that you are washing your hands? Why is it important to go to the toilet? Why should you have a toilet in your home? So again, the power of communication to deliver those messages, but citizens have to own the program. And one of my favorite ones there is, in fact, the question that I like to ask is, do you know where your shit goes? So, because what's happened is we've had this amazing program where we funneled all the shit into toilets. But if that is just finding its way back into fields and drains because we're not treating the sewage,
Sure.
we really would have gone through one of the most expensive exercises in history without achieving what we need to achieve. So the treatment side, the sewage treatment, whether it is down at the rural levels through distributed STPs, as we call them, sewage treatment plants, or larger government-provided plants, we need to address it at the whole fecal sludge management space. And then I would just add that it's important to look at everything through the gender lens. This is not just me speaking because of my work in women empowerment, but you want to make sure that women are central to a lot of these changes. And they were in the case of sanitation, because women went into the fields, they were raped, they were hit on. It was highly dangerous to have them out there. So the fact that the toilet was now at home, it became a matter of pride for a family to be able to provide for the women in the family. So looking at things through the gender lens also becomes important. And I would just say that COVID highlights everything in this space, because at the end of the day, if we have a health issue in a large country like India, you can be sure the world is going to be infected. We have to ensure that the world has one standard for health, and one standard can only come with provision of water and sanitation in every country.
Thank you so much. I mean, thank you for these inspiring words. Thank you for your activism, where you are working in a field that you have seen tangible results, which we all sort of dream about. And also for adding in the private sector to all of the elements that you've just mentioned, which is essential. So you've spoken about community, and I'm afraid we have to turn our segment over to a really amazing video that will illustrate what you're talking about. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Great. Thank you, Nina, and thank you, Annie. And Annie will come back in just a moment. And thank you, Nina, for the partnership with the India Sanitation Coalition, which, as you'll hear in a moment, has been absolutely critical for the work of OneShared.World. As Nina and then Annie mentioned, this is all about community. How do we build communities of change? And if we're imagining global systemic change, it has to range from a villager in the most vulnerable communities in the world, from the smallest water well, from the smallest toilet, to the halls of the United Nations and beyond. And for that reason, OneShared.World has been collaborating with our partners in Footsteps Bangladesh to go and visit a small community and a small vulnerable community in Bangladesh and ask them about what they think needs to have happen to address the global problem of WashPap for all. Here's the film.
Shamima Begum is returning home after fetching water from a tube well just a few minutes away from where she lives. Until recently, she was traveling 2 kilometers every day to reach the nearest tube well, which was functional only occasionally. A few years ago, this might have been just an inconvenience, but today, it could cost her and her family their lives. The absence of water, sanitation, and hygiene, or WASH in Kushtia, has massively intensified the spread of COVID-19 and left locals like Shamima ill-prepared to fight it. As in other densely populated, highly unequal countries, infections have swept district after district and then spread across the globe, reaching geographical, political, and societal boundaries. This is why WASH is inextricably linked to pandemic protection, or PAP. In the past, localities like Shamima's have seen efforts by the state, the UN, and NGOs to provide WASH through tube wells, toilets, and hand washing stations. But without community awareness and ownership, these facilities have been poorly maintained, forcing locals to rely on unhygienic, subpar facilities for their daily WASH needs. Organizations have rarely consulted locals like Shamima on how to solve the WASH problems that affect them so intimately.
আমাদের এমনই একটা পরিবেশে আমরা বাস করি, আমাদের কোনো জায়গা জমি নাই। এই ভূমিহীনে ঘর দিয়েছে সরকার, এই ঘর পায়ে আমরা এখানে থাকি। আমার উন্নতি বলতে নাই, জন কোনো সময় চলে না। এদের দিকে ঘর বাড়ি পায়খানা কল এগুলা সারার কোনো অর্থ নাই, এই জন্যই সারা না ভাঙি চুরি পড়ে থাকে।
এখানে ধরেন 50 ঘর বসতি আছে, এখানে বসতি 50 ঘর থাকলে তার ছেলে পেলে দিয়ে অনেকগুলো ধরেন প্রায় 150 মতো লোক আছে। আমাদের কল আছে 2টা, এই 2টা কলে অনেক সমস্যা আমাদের, মানে কেউ কাউকে বলতে পারে না, বলতে গেলে ধরেন ঝয় ঝগড়ায় মানে নিজের মতো ধরেন দাঁড়ায় থাকি একজনে কাজ করার একজনে দাঁড়ায় থাকে, একজনে ব্যবহার করার একজনে দাঁড়ায় থাকে, এমন ভাবে ধরেন আমরা চলাফেরা করি।
Without an understanding of the local context, interventions have been disjointed, flawed, and ill-fitted to people's needs. By August 2021, Kushtia alone had seen nearly 16,000 COVID cases and over 600 deaths, numbers that could have been far lower had inclusive WASH-PAP interventions been put in place. But even when excluded from pandemic response efforts, communities have driven their own solutions. In Kushtia, things took a turn for the better when a group of young locals came together with district authorities to address the threat that the pandemic and poor WASH-PAP pose to people's lives and livelihoods through interventions tailored to local needs. This small group of locals offer us a new way to think about fighting the pandemic through targeted solutions that harness local wisdom, unite stakeholders at all levels, and empower communities as equal partners. COVID-19 does not discriminate by nationality, race, gender, or class. This makes ensuring WASH-PAP for all our strongest line of defense against the current and future pandemics.
আমি লাস্ট 5 ইয়ার সামাজিক কার্যক্রমের সাথে যুক্ত। আমাদের এলাকাতে আগে থেকেই ওয়াটার ও স্যানিটেশন হাইজিনের অনেক সমস্যা ছিল। তো এই কাজগুলো করতে গিয়ে দেখি যে আমার এলাকাতে আরো অনেকেই এই ব্যাপারগুলো নিয়ে কাজ করছে। তো আমরা নেক্সটে সবাই একত্রিত হই এই কাজগুলো করার জন্য। তখন করোনার দ্বিতীয় ঢেউ চলে আসে। এরই মাঝে আমরা দেখলাম যে করোনা বিষয়ে গণসচেতনতা বৃদ্ধির কাজ করা দরকার।
আমার বাসা আশ্রয় প্রকল্প 2-এ করোনাকালীন আমরা যে মানে কিভাবে মাস্ক ব্যবহার করব, বাইরে থেকে আসার পরে পোশাক পরিচ্ছদ করবো এবং হাত ধুবো, এগুলা কেউই জানতাম না। আমি ওদেরকে এক জায়গায় ডাকি, ডেকে উঠান বৈঠক করি, মানে আমাদের মতো করে আমরা যতটুকু পারি উঠান বৈঠক করে তাদেরকে বোঝাই।
আমরা যখন তৃণমূল পর্যায়ে মানুষের সাথে কাজ করতে গিয়েছি, তখন দেখেছি বিভিন্ন দাতা সংস্থা এবং সরকারের সঠিক পরিকল্পনা ছিল না পায়খানা এবং নলকূপ স্থাপনে। আমরা এই প্রান্তিক জনগোষ্ঠীকে নিয়ে বিভিন্ন জায়গাতে টিউবওয়েল স্থাপন করেছি। এর ফলে সরকারের যেমন লকডাউনটা সঠিকভাবে বাস্তবায়ন হয়েছে, একজন মানুষ আরেকজন মানুষের বাড়িতে যায়নি, এতে করে করোনার বিস্তারটাও কমে গিয়েছে।
আমাদের এই টিউবওয়েলটা দেওয়ার কারণে আমাদের অনেক উপকারিত হয়েছে। পথচারীরা চলতে এখানে পানি নেয় এবং ইঞ্জিন চালিত কিছু গাড়ি এখানে এসে থাকলেও কিছু পানি নেয়। করোনা থেকে বাঁচার জন্য আমাদের সবসময় হাত পা ধোয়ার জন্য সবাইকে বলছি এবং এলাকার মানুষকে বলছি, এসে আমাদের এখানে মুদিখানার দোকান থেকে যদি কোনো জিনিস খাদ্য হিসেবে ব্যবহার করে তাহলে সেখান থেকে সাবান দিয়ে হাতটা পরিষ্কার করে ধুয়ে তাহলে ওই খাদ্যটা গ্রহণ করে।
and efforts to address this multifaceted problem can only succeed if our policies, programs, and problem solving involve a wide spectrum of political, economic, and social actors. If locals like Bappi, Lippi, and Rahim are supported nationally and globally in driving local solutions. As humanity faces its greatest pandemic in a century, the message being sent by the people of Kushtia must be heard. That one person's vulnerability puts everyone at risk, and the safety of one Shamima Begum is key to the safety of the global community. This makes ensuring WashPAP for the world's most vulnerable not a matter of charity, but the smartest investment we can make in a safer collective future for all. COVID-19 has left over 4.6 million dead, with new variants originating and flourishing in nations with poor wash facilities. Today, Shamima no longer has to travel for miles to access water. But how much protection a small community intervention can offer her and her locality against another wave of the pandemic remains to be seen. Globally, over 2 billion remain deprived of WashPAP, with little effort to engage those most affected by its absence. With an end to COVID nowhere in sight, a new approach has never been more urgent. Because we live in one shared world and one interconnected ecosystem, we must become one united humanity. The time to act in unison and with determination is now.
That was incredible. And I think, we feel a call to action. And it's good to know in our next session, we're going to be hearing from 4 dedicated and amazing young people who heard that call and responded. They're going to talk about their work leading a collaborative effort to draft a United Nations General Assembly resolution, an innovative resolution that takes a new approach to solving these tough problems that you have been hearing about. So they are Sandy Gendy, who is a law student in Canada, Meenakshi Madhupan, who's a law student in the United Kingdom, Zoe Fisher, a college student in the US, and Peter Ulrich, a master's in public health student also in the United States. Over to you, Sandy.
Thank you so much, Annie, for your warm welcome. I'm Sandy Gendy, and I work with OneShared.World as the Director of Global Leadership. Now, you might be asking yourself, what is WashPAP and why should I care about it? Well, WashPAP is all about guaranteeing safe drinking water, safe access to sanitation and hygiene practices, as well as essential pandemic protection for everyone on Earth by 2030. Now, we decided to focus our mission on WashPAP because following our Rise or Fall Together report, we've noticed that we're only as safe as the most vulnerable populations among us. And in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've realized that the pandemics can transcend borders and boundaries. And therefore, this is the smartest investment we can make in our collective future that unites us all together. Now, we've taken these goals and we sort of translated these principles into action. Last year, our goal was to get the G20 to recognize WashPAP 2030. And we've successfully done so when they've included our language in their communique. This year, we're taking it one step further, and we're really pushing and working towards a UN General Assembly resolution endorsed by the G20. I am so honored and proud to say that this has physically manifested itself. Our UN resolution is officially released, and you can see it on our website. We took several steps to getting to this point where we're at right now. We've had partnerships with MUN Impact, with multiple students, hundreds of students worldwide in multiple languages. We've had consultations with the India Sanitation Coalition and the Aga Khan Foundation. We've had meetings with the Special Rapporteur for UN Water. We've had advisory sessions with foreign ministries leading the discussion on WASH. Essentially, we've had all these amazing advisory sessions with leaders in various industries, including the UN systems, NGOs and civil society groups, business professionals, and way more. And that goes to show you how truly interdependent we all are, and how committed we all are to achieving this and guaranteeing WashPap 2030 for everyone on Earth. Once again, I'm excited to announce with you all that the UN resolution is officially released, and you can see it on our website. Now hear from MUN Impact, Zoe Fisher.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zoe Fisher, and I'm one of the Global Secretaries General for MUN Impact. In short, MUN Impact is an NGO working in collaboration with the UN Department of Public Information to inspire action and impact for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we largely work within the Model UN community. So traditional Model UN delegates or students represent countries, and they draft resolutions that end up sitting on Google Docs or in desk drawers collecting dust, and nothing ever comes out of it. So when MUN Impact heard what OneShared.World wanted to do with their UN resolution that actually takes concrete, direct action on the WashPap topic, we knew that we had to get involved. And what's so special about the WashPap campaign is that it places youth at the center. Youth have bold ideas that are not watered down by politics or the cynicism of experience. And we can see this in the clauses of the resolution that you're going to read shortly, with solutions that have never been proposed by world leaders before. So this collaboration started back in March. MUN Impact got in touch with OneShared.World, and we held a series of Model UN debates, attracting over 200 plus middle school, high school, and university students in English, Spanish, Russian, and French. And the students drafted a variety of resolutions after these debates that were then taken and consolidated and edited and consulted with experts to get the final document that you're going to see later on today. So besides helping young people get access to WashPap necessities, this resolution empowered so many young students from around the world to actually take solving these issues into their own hands, because youth were involved in this drafting process from day one. So after our Model United Nations debates in March, we wanted to make this even more accessible because of its success, and we changed the model to a discussion or consultation model that was able to get even more students involved in the drafting process. So to talk a little bit more about that is Meenakshi, also from MUN Impact. So I'll pass the mic to her.
Thank you, Zoe. The way the WashPap 2030 resolution was created and continues to evolve is through the form of youth consultations held together with partners from around the globe. I work as Deputy Secretary General for South Asia in MUN Impact's university team, and also helped facilitate the WashPap consultations. Last month, on August 20th and 21st, MUN Impact and OneShared.World collaborated with the Indian Sanitation Coalition to organize virtual WashPap consultations in 4 major Indian cities. As Zoe mentioned, the first set of debates to help create the resolution followed Model UN procedure, but the WashPap India project, after a lot of discussion, we decided to stray from that path because ultimately the aim was to provide youth with a voice on global issues like WashPap, which have and continue to affect us all. So we couldn't just restrict this opportunity to students who were familiar with Model UN or lived in big cities. This meant reaching out to those who didn't have that kind of exposure as well. It was at this point in time that consultations came into the picture and replaced debates for the better. From our side, we provided students with guiding questions, which allowed them to touch on different aspects of the WashPap agenda, and also assigned WASH specialists for each consultations, essentially experts in their field who helped guide the discussion with their knowledge. Although most of the questions were specific to WASH initiatives in India, the ideas that emerged out of each discussion were such that they could be tailored globally. And it was all the more amazing, I think, because it wasn't just students contributing, moderators and specialists pitched in at times too, which again reinforced that sense of interdependence and the shared stake which we all have in this. Similarly, our most recent WashPap consultation took place last week with Global Encounters and the Aga Khan Academies. We had youth joining us from Kenya and London to India, Afghanistan, the United States, and everywhere else in between. In these consultations, with the help of guiding questions again, students had the opportunity to not only add on their ideas to the resolution, but also help improve the existing ideas in the draft. Although we stray from the conventional procedure of creating a UN or model UN resolution, I think that's the beauty of these consultations, because youth voices come through in their purest form when people aren't just representing countries. Instead, they're using their experiences and backgrounds to express their own opinions. The product of these consultations has quite literally been touched by a lot of hands and minds. And the way we've been able to achieve this from the comfort of our homes makes it even more incredible. As for how exactly the resolution itself was molded into what it is now, Peter can expand on that.
Thanks, Meenakshi. Our resolution starts with a simple premise. The United Nations has made goals to ensure universal water, sanitation, and hygiene by 2030. Since then, many resolutions have been put forth to emphasize this task. And still, many years later, the UN has admitted we will not reach these goals. Now, this is not to suggest that there haven't been meaningful initiatives. There certainly have been. But the reality is our world leaders have failed to make concrete, globally agreed upon steps to accomplish universal WASH-PAP. And because of this, citizens within our global community are dying. As a reaction to this, we decided to tackle concrete topics within water, sanitation, hygiene, and pandemic protection to make WASH-PAP. Within our resolution, we emphasize several points. First, we need to develop novel methods for resource allocation. Secondly, we need to promote education, advocacy, and culturally relevant training. Lastly, we all need to recognize that our environment and human health are intimately linked. Now, among the other things that we've mentioned in our resolution, we give several examples and direct methods for delivering these concepts. When we talk about these concepts in our resolution, there are several themes that run through it. First is the interconnectedness of our world. We are only as safe as the most vulnerable around us. And this is made especially clear in the pandemic. Our second main theme is that we really do need concrete steps and ideas to reach our goals. This leads to our last clause of the resolution. We set a mandate for every member state, in conjunction with UN Water, to have a full plan by 2022. Then we can begin to roll out these plans by 2023 at the UN Conference on the Water Action Decade. Today, I'm extremely excited to announce the official release of our resolution. This is an 11-page document with 9 primary clauses and 23 subclauses. And you can find this resolution on our website and in the links presented in the summit. Now, while the United Nations General Assembly meets this week, we expect and demand that our world leaders recognize the concepts presented in this work, which represents the voices of youth leaders from nearly 40 countries across the world. Our generation is in a position to inherit a truly tragic situation. We want our voices heard by our leaders today so we can avoid the potentially dire future. We took input from a variety of countries, a variety of cultures, a variety of perspectives, but in the end, this was a primarily youth-driven initiative with the help of influential individuals. We were truly privileged to have leaders in the UN, leaders in WASH, and a combination of both help us throughout this process. We even had a former chief counsel of the United Nations help us. Now, I expect that many of these leaders were preparing to receive a mediocre document from a couple of teenagers, but time and time again, they would come back to us saying they're blown away by our work. And I'm absolutely convinced it's because we have so many perspectives on this that has turned it into a high quality product. And getting input from different leaders has only increased the quality. So the piece that we present to you today was a thoroughly vetted piece by experts and received constant input from a variety of perspectives. This has culminated into a document that we have today that we believe can be referenced as a blueprint for delivering water, sanitation, hygiene, and pandemic protection to our global community. And with that, I'll pass it back to Sandy.
Peter, for that. Now, you might be asking yourself, after such an invigorating session on WashPap, how can I get involved? What can I do to make this a reality? What are the steps that I can take to make sure I can act as a global change maker? Now, the answer to that is very, very simple. First, utilizing a platform in which you already use in your daily lives. Social media and the power of social media can truly help make this a global advocacy campaign. Using hashtag WashPap2030 in all of your posts, adding your own video to the Share the Water challenge, and making sure you educate yourself and your community around you of WashPap 2030 and the steps that you can make to directly affect change. Second, call on your world leaders, your government leaders, and your UN reps to guarantee access to water, hygiene, sanitation, and essential pandemic protection for everyone on Earth by 2030. You can also make sure to check out our global advocacy training sessions in which we will showcase to you the steps you can take to make this a reality in your locality or your globality. And finally, make sure to check out this amazing UN resolution created by hundreds of people from various industries, various backgrounds, various ages, and certainly various countries, and see what we propose and demand of our world leaders. Thank you all so much. And I'm going to pass it back to Peter for concluding remarks.
Thanks, Sandy. I want to first thank my colleagues and friends, Sandy, Zoe, and Meenakshi, for presenting today. Next, a big thank you to the rest of our speakers today who support this mission. And most importantly, thank you to the hundreds of youth leaders around the world who contributed to this resolution. We could not have done this amazing movement without you, and I hope you have tuned in to witness the change you have inspired. Next, I'm excited to introduce the Vice Chair of UN Water, Kelly Ann Naylor, who will be receiving our resolution today. UN Water is the United Nations initiative that covers all freshwater-related matters, including sanitation. So please welcome Kelly Ann Naylor.
Thank you, Peter, and sincere thanks for inviting me to participate today. It's an honor to be part of such a vital discussion. As the resolution points out, water sanitation and hygiene interventions and systems have been on the front lines of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet even today, 1 in 5 children globally does not have enough water to meet their daily needs. Nearly half the world's population lacks safely managed sanitation. And at the onset of the pandemic, 3 in 10 people worldwide could not wash their hands with soap and water at home. All of these pose major risks as we fight not only the current pandemic, but prevent future ones. The young people who have joined us today can tell you this from their firsthand experience. They have experienced the impacts of the pandemic and see how changes in climate are affecting water, sanitation, and hygiene in their homes, at school, in healthcare facilities. Young people are now inheriting a world which is becoming increasingly unrecognizable, and the urgency for protecting water, health, and the environment are greater than ever. The young people who drafted this resolution today and millions of others around the world just like them demand our action. As world leaders gather to discuss these important issues at the UN General Assembly this week and in the lead up to COP26 and on to the UN Conference on Water in 2023, we must ensure that commitments that are being made are backed up with concrete action on the ground. Young people are the leaders of today and tomorrow. We must listen to you. We must foster your voices. We must help you unlock and fully achieve your full potential. This includes not only ensuring for meaningful participation in decision-making processes, but also providing opportunities for you to gain the technical skills in areas of water, sanitation, and hygiene to lead this change. We therefore urge all partners, UN agencies, member states, donors, private sector, and civil society match your support to the level of the challenge that we are facing today on the water crisis. Together, we can reimagine and build a better future for the entire world, for this generation of children and young people, and all of the future generations to come. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to reflect on this important work that you've been doing. The time to act is now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Naylor. It is inspiring to know that senior officials at the United Nations see this issue from the same perspective. I'd like to finally, as part of this segment, introduce Binay Jha, a distinguished leader within the WashPap campaign who will tell us about his exciting initiative.
Thank you for allowing me this privilege of introducing the WashPap tree plantation program that's part of the OneShared.World Global WashPap Campaign 2030. Just as humanity is interconnected, so are water, trees, and forests. The tree plantation campaign is a living idea, a voice, an effective voice for the WashPap turned into reality by the amazing OneShared.World WashPap team. We have gone literally to the roots for this. In the last few weeks, we've reached out to people in many countries across the world, from New Zealand to Argentina. And in India, we have reached out to thousands of people in 25 states and union territories. Ram Kali, a woman who makes barely $7 a day, has planted 10 WashPap trees. A little kid, 2-year-old from Dubai, planted lemon trees and sent photos. Corporates have got involved. A company is getting 180,000 seed balls made every month, which generates money for the women who make it, and that will help to plant new trees everywhere. NGOs are joining in large numbers. Women for Water, an organization in a state, has promised to work with us, planting trees and working on real-time solutions. 5,500 adolescent girls in another state will be the ambassadors for WashPap and the WashPap tree. The best way to fight a pandemic is to prevent it. And this collateral movement of WashPap and the tree is the best means to prepare humanity to stop the next pandemic. So we invite all of you who are watching this program and who will watch it later and who you will be getting in contact with to plant trees, to put potted plants if you cannot plant trees, and upload photos through the OneShared.World website. As your WashPap trees grow in numbers and size, they will add to the growing global voice and effort to meet our common challenges, help establish universal WashPap, and help create a clean environment and a healthy future for humanity. Our collective actions today will be the voice that will determine the future well-being of humanity, the earth, and its environment. And as the resolution has just been introduced, as it travels around the world, knocking on the doors of and the minds of world leaders, the WashPap tree will be a speaking tree, bringing people together, working to improve the environment, and finding real-time solutions to our problems. Thank you. Please plant a WashPap tree. Please help bring WashPap to all of humanity, especially the people who are challenged at the earliest. Thank you very much. God bless you all.